My gosh, it took us 3 episodes of Goodbye Lara to find the answer to saving all of mermaid kind, which seems to be Yuri. Yes. The thing that will save all of mermaid kind, potentially humankind, or may potentially even destroy both, is in fact, yes, Yuri. Yes, Goodbye Lara is here. I have watched the first 3 episodes of the series, and so far, it's sort of an interesting take on the Little Mermaid franchise. Something that's been pretty much done a million times at this point, different ways of potentially taking the Little Mermaid story, either retelling it or twisting it in some way. I think we even had Bubbles was technically a, spin on the Little Mermaid. We like to do this one. But this was kind of a more, I guess, taking it the route of Yuri specifically, because we do have a series here where it does open up with the typical storyline of Little Mermaid, of, fall in love with the prince and everything like that, but then kind of shattering that and immediately throwing it into modern times and having her fall in love with a random girl. That seems to be the direction that it's taking it. Now, if that will turn to something interesting going forward, that's the big question mark there, but this is my thoughts on the first 3 episodes, so let's just jump right into it. Like I mentioned before, it opens up with the birth of the 6th princess of this mermaid kingdom, which is Lara. And Lara very quickly starts to get an interest in things of the human world, like little relics that are falling down in the ocean. At some point, she starts collecting a whole bunch of it. She becomes an official princess and told that she is never to go near the humans ever because they're forbidden. It's like a grave sin of theirs. It seems like her father has this nasty grudge against the humans. I'm going to assume that probably they killed his wife. That's my assumption, or at least he blames them for it, something like that. She could even be human. Let's see. But yes, at some point, she ends up stumbling upon this shipwreck where this prince falls down in the ocean. Lara ends up saving his life, taking him back to land, before she returns back home and is caught. She's caught with human land sand in her presence, and so they know that she's actually gone near the humans, and thus she's thrown in a cell for 100 days. This is the point in which her aunt shows up and offers her the ability to seek out her true wishes, which she brings up this little mirror and shows her the mirror, and it shows her true desires, and sure enough, that human prince is in the mirror. So she's like, here, take this potion, you'll turn into a human, and then you can go to the human lands and you can seek out your deepest desires, which is this prince. To which Lara does. Lara drinks the potion, goes to land, meets the prince. They fall in love together. It seems like their future is destined, just like the Little Mermaid story, but then suddenly the potion runs out. She starts to turn back into a mermaid, and the prince is shocked by this. You tried to deceive me. How dare you? And just before he's about to strike her down, she starts to cry, realize that she actually loved this individual. A light starts to shine within her. And at this point, she ends up being transported away and put into sort of a hibernation inside of a clam. Now, the important thing here is that light is very important, because it seems like every single one of these princesses of this kingdom of mermaids, one of them is going to be the destined one that will bring light upon the kingdom. It seems like her mother was a precious individual that was able to create this light that has lasted for so long. But one of these daughters is going to be that one. And it seems like, based on the reaction of the aunt as she was watching all this happen, yeah, Lara could be that individual. That Lara could be the one that, if she does find true love, she will bring light to this entire kingdom. Anyways, cut forward all the way to current times. Yes, we're jumping forward into 2026. That's when Lara finally wakens up from this hibernation, and the entire kingdom is gone. Everything is gone. And she looks at all these mirrors that show all these different memories of what happened. And it seems like after she was gone, everybody was frantic about her being gone. At some point, the light in the kingdom started to fade. They sought out the help of the aunt to try to find out where they can go. And it seems like she brought him to somewhere else. We find out later on, she brought him to near where Japan is and pretty much put them all into hibernation. But Lara, upon waking up, she ends up talking to the aunt once again. The aunt says, haha, it's all your fault. You screwed up. You went to the human lands. You did the thing you weren't supposed to do. And Lara's like, I know. What can I do? What can I do to fix this? I know it's my fault. It's kind of your fault too. I know it's my fault. What can I do? Well, the aunt ends up giving her one more chance. Okay, let's go to land again. You got to find that true love again. You got to bring the light back. Go on to human lands. Sure enough, gives her another potion, sends her off into the human lands before she's thrown literally into human lands, right into the presence of a girl named Mari, who immediately puts on her boxing gloves and punches her in the face, knocks her out. Because that's funny. Okay, it's just a dorky random end to the first episode. Anyways, what precedes this whole thing is that now Lara is living with Mari. She's trying to figure out what she's supposed to do there. Her aunt is now a small little fish that is owned by Mari, so that's how they kind of know each other. And yeah, she's just trying to figure out where her love is there, trying to figure out the human world itself. Eventually we get into Mari, who is the person that she's living with as human. When she was very young, she got interested in boxing, and it became like her major focus. At some point, her mother passed away, and she's got a big tournament coming up, and so she's trying to get focused on that. But for some reason, Lara being there is really distracting for her, and she doesn't like it. It all kind of eventually leads to Lara realizing that she's sort of a burden upon Mari, going to leave, and then Mari kind of realizing, that she's turning her eyes away from things that are kind of important, which is, Lara. She finds Lara to be kind of a little bit goofy and kind of funny, and because she's a dummy, she wants to hang out with her or whatever and help her out, which just kind of sparks a little bit of a doki doki within Lara. At which point we have this big, massive fish spear thing appears out of nowhere. I think it's a fish. I think it looked like a dagger the first time it showed it, but I think it's a fish. And this big fish thing that appears out of the ocean, I think is a symbolism of her love. That now Lara has a love for Mari because she's dumb and that she likes funny things and Lara's funny. So, Doki Dokis, Yuri will save the world. Now, they did imply at some point, from Grace's perspective, that if Mari didn't keep Lara in check, she might stray off and could cause the destruction of their land. So it does kind of imply the idea that Lara herself could destroy the human world. But I don't know, that's probably going to go in the realms of essentially both the humans and the mermaids being very tied together. That if the light is lost within the mermaid lands, that will cause a loss in the human lands at some point. Something like that. Anyways, my thoughts on Goodbye Lara. So far, good. First things first, visually. God damn. I love how this show looks. And this is the unfortunate thing. I know that a lot of people are going to be turned off by this. I'm already seeing plenty of people that are poo-pooing Ghost in the Shell, and that show looks absolutely gorgeous. The animation's amazing. I can see if people dislike that, they're going to dislike this one because it's going for a very 90s style anime. It's got kind of that aesthetic. It's got the kind of filtering on it, the actual visual designs, the character designs themselves. It looks very 90s. So I can kind of see a lot of people that are more modern anime fans looking back at this and going, ooh, it's an old show. Why would I watch that? Ooh, the character designs, this looks old. Why would you watch this old thing? Additionally, you have the difficulty of it being, yes, Yuri and a romance series. So you have 3 notches that are going to probably cut down a lot of people from watching this show. It doesn't look modern. It's got Yuri and it's a romance. Blah. But I think for me personally, this is nostalgia. I get nostalgia trips from this. And I think animation-wise, it's really, really good. Very little of this show is just very basic camera work. It's not basic in its perspective shots, the visual design itself, the animation's constantly moving. It just looks really gorgeous. And there's a lot of set pieces in these first 3 episodes that are absolutely amazing. The first episode at the end there, where it has Lara coming out and being shot off to the human world, that little shot of her coming out of the water. Oh my gosh, dude, oh my gosh, that was so freaking beautiful. Any scene with Grace, I fell in love with Grace's character really early on. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that they just did an amazing job with her character, her design and just how her body itself moves. I'm assuming that maybe the eels and whatnot are with her, or a part of her, or maybe potentially just kind of always next to her to make her look like this massive being. But she looks amazing. But I fell in love with her character more in the fact that I just like her character, which we can get into now. Overall, I'm not incredibly impressed by this show so far. Let me be perfectly clear there when it comes to story. I'm not really engaged with this at all. It seems like, again, a very kind of predictable mermaid story. When the first episode, it has goes the prince. I'm like, this isn't going to last. I knew because it was rushing into going with the prince, it wasn't going to last. And I knew based on the trailers, it was going to have this other girl, Mari. And I kind of assumed from the get-go this was going to be Yuri. I just had a feeling by looking at the visuals and stuff, this was probably going to be either a Yuri story or a, just finding family type of story. One of those two. But either way, when it came into it, I'm like, this thing with the prince is going to last. So it felt very kind of predictable that eventually when she does start to lose the potion, he turns on her. Now, I still have an assumption that for some reason, the prince is going to be long-lasting or going to be reincarnated. I am no doubt in my mind that he's going to be in the modern times Japan, and he's going to run into her, and he's going to feel regret for it, because there was a moment where he had that regret. He had that little shot very briefly when she said that she loved him, or she was thinking it. he looked at her and he had a hesitation. So I'm assuming that it's going to be an aspect of him regretting that. And there's going to be a reincarnation at some point. But him aside, it was predictable that this was going to fall apart. Now, beyond then, it's not been an incredible show. Like, so far, it's been a lot of fish out of water scenario where you have Lara. She's living in a world of humans. She's trying to figure things out. She's trying to find her place. I find Lara to be very goofy as a character. I like the personality of Lara. I like the personality of Mari too. But Lara herself so far has just been basically a fish out of water trying to seek out love. And Mari herself is been a lot more fleshed out. She's much more about the idea of, you know, seeking out your dreams and being a little bit too focused on what you're going towards that you blind out everything else. But them together so far hasn't really sold me. I think my biggest issue overall is that there's a lot of build up to this relationship of Lara and Mari, but I'm not feeling it. And yeah, granted with, you know, the prince, there was no build up either, but that was a lot of a time skip. I think she loved him based on his appearance and that she had some sort of interest in the human world and that she sought that out. And eventually it was a crush in the end that fell apart. Whereas here it's trying to build into this idea that Mari is something special. And I haven't quite figured that out yet. I think that's probably my biggest hang up really with the first 3 episodes is that it's a lot of build up to Mari's the one for Lara. Doki dokis, but why? Why? Because she's not disgusted by Lara? Now, we haven't established that yet. Yes, she knows that she's a mermaid, and she hasn't been disgusted by that as being a vile mermaid, just like other individuals that are humans have done. But that's not enough for me to go, oh, wow, yeah, Mari's the one. Love, romance, great stuff. There's probably going to be some more build-up. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to assume that within the next, you know, we still have 9 more episodes, we can build into Mari as a character in a relationship that's going to be more interesting. But so far, it's very early stage Doki Dokis with a massive fish showing up to, you know, symbolize that love, romance, right? Like I said earlier, my favorite character so far has been Grace. I like Grace's character. Grace feels like a very gray area character, and that's what's more interesting to me. Early on, she's portrayed as the one that did the greatest sin. She betrayed the kingdom. She did things that she wasn't supposed to do. She's been banished. How dare she step into this kingdom? Strike her down. That kind of thing. Grace shows up in the appearance of this wet nurse, and she tries to give off some sort of prophecy that Lara could be the one that could potentially bring back the princess. She says late princess, so that's going to be, obviously, Rowan, the king's wife. I'm assuming that Grace is the sister of this princess, and the thing here is that it seems like she's implying that Lara could be that reincarnation, so to speak, or that she could bring her back. So I can see why Grace specifically is so obsessed with Lara and trying to fulfill this whole prophecy that she's kind of alluding to. She wants Lara to find this love because she will do the same thing that her sister did, presumably her sister. So again, this is where I get in that interesting moral gray area where it feels like early on she's the villain. She's been banished by Rowan. Of course she's a bad guy, right? But it's quickly showing that Rowan, the king, yes, hates the humans, is kind of almost in the realm of prejudice against them, even though we do see signs there should be a separation here, because obviously Lara sees that firsthand with somebody that she thought she was in love with, drawing his blade to her. It doesn't seem like these two sides like each other. But while Rowan doesn't like them, presumably again because possibly something to do with the death of his wife, Grace has an interest in it and is trying to nurture Lara. And you would think that, yeah, potentially she is just tricking Lara, but at some point we do realize that it seems like she is finding love out there and potentially could bring that light upon this world. I think there's a potential here that Grace knew that the kingdom eventually would lose its light and that Lara needed to find this love and that she potentially wouldn't find it there. Or maybe she was just having fun and then eventually things kind of blew up in her face and she realized, crap, we do got to get her in love quick. And everybody's sleeping, so the only place that she can find love is on land, so I got to send her there anyways. I think there's a chance that early on she was having fun with Lara, and then once the light was lost, she brought everybody to a place where they can hibernate, and then she realized, crap, I do have to find her somebody to love, and it's probably going to be somebody on land because everybody else is asleep right now. But yeah, I like her so far. I think, again, she's an interesting gray area that I think she's turning into probably one of the more dynamic characters of the story so far in trying to seek some sort of love for Lara, trying to push her to get out there and find something before it's too late. again, there's an interesting aspect there where she is sort of revealing a potential darker side of this whole situation, which is that if Lara doesn't find it or maybe does it wrong, it could spell doom for everything. And that might be something that we get into towards the later part of the series, probably some epic climax moment where Lara is, conflicted and suddenly doom is coming to everything and she's got to find the true love before she blows up everything and she finds it and thus ray of light, moment. I don't know. We'll see. I think so far with the first 3 episodes, I'm not putting a lot of hope into this having a really deep storyline, but it's got enough in here that I'm enjoying and sticking my teeth into. I think back when I looked into who was actually writing this one, I didn't see anything that was too standout-ish, but we'll see. But so far so good. It's got a good charm to it. The characters are enjoyable enough. Hopefully it kind of pans in something interesting. Hopefully the romance is decent, but so far it's on course. It's on course. It hasn't really offended me yet. I'm not bored watching it. Again, like I said before, I think I get a lot of love out of it just out of the nostalgia of the visuals and whatnot that it's doing, but we'll see. There's also the whole thing around Lisa, her sister, that's kind of doing her own thing off to the side. Maybe that'll turn into something interesting, but that's my thoughts so far on Goodbye Lara. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, hit the like button down below. Until next time, y'all take care.